In August 2025, I made just over $5,000. That's about £3,900 in KDP royalties. But the real question is, how much of that was profit? And spoiler alert, it was $2,300, which is about £1,600. But stick with the rest of the video to find out why that number matters and why I'm actually really happy with it. Hi everyone, I'm Simon from Salary to Side Hustle. And I've just given up my corporate job to focus on income streams like KDP and YouTube. And on this channel, I'll be sharing the ups and downs and everything I've learned over the coming months and years. But enough intro, let's dive into the August facts and figures. My KDP journey started in March 2023 after I'd been looking on YouTube for side hustle ideas. And this seemed like a really good one. There were all the usual overblown promises of $10,000 overnight, making one notebook. But I took that with a pinch of salt and decided I'd give it a go and see if I knuckled down what would come of it. My first sale came in April 2023, and I'm eternally grateful for some random Canadian stranger who bought my car colouring book for kids. That really started me off on the road that has now opened up into a much bigger and, for me, successful side hustle. And since then, I've been building my business part-time whilst having a full-time job on the go. But let's switch to the figures now and have a look at the numbers. So as you can see, I've been doing KDP now for just over 2 years. There is actually a tiny bar in April 23 that you can't even see there, but that is that one sale to that random Canadian. And then it built from there, and it was a really good upward trajectory all the way through to December. And as people who are involved in KDP know, Q4 is when things really take off. So I was delighted with that jump from November to December. And then it really surprised me that actually the numbers stayed solid after December and continued throughout the rest of the first half of the year. But then they dipped away a little bit in the autumn, and then they built back again for Q4, where, as you can see, I sold about 2,700 units as my best month yet. Things dipped away again then through the first half of this year, and then they're starting to build back a little bit now, which has really surprised me, given all the challenges that KDP have thrown down during my relatively short time doing this as a side hustle. So that's my my book sold, as you can see, 40,860, which I'm delighted with, and looking forward to the 50,000 as the next stop. And in terms of the royalties that's brought in, as you can see, it's just over 91,000. But as per my opening comment, I spend quite a lot in terms of getting those royalties. So the actual profit is substantially less than that. But you can see it tracks pretty much the same pattern as the previous page. But if you do notice, the last couple of months have kind of stood out a bit, and we'll come to why in a little while. But fundamentally, the money I get per sale has gone up. So that's the grand total for my my overall account. And then if we flip to the actual orders that I achieved in August 2025, you can see that's 1,995. Pretty spread out, really. The minimum, certainly for the first 3 quarters of the month, was around the 50s, the low 50s, and then I'd get up to the 80s occasionally. But then I had a bit of a problem with ads at the end of the year, where for some reason they stopped working, or at least they stopped coming up with as many impressions as normal, and then the sales dipped away a little bit at the end of the month. So what I thought was going to be a 2,000 sale month or order month ended up being just under. But that's still a good month for me. And the royalties obviously are very similar. You can see that dip at the end of the month where the ads weren't working properly. And I guess if you take the max and min figures, we're looking at just about $100 as the minimum day, and then we're kind of pushing 200 occasionally through the month as well. So they're the August figures. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my KDP business. $5,000, to me that's a lot of royalties in a month. But I have a lot of books, as you can see. There's 960 at the time of recording. And I mainly focus on medium content and low content books. Colouring books and craft books are probably my main line now. I did start off doing a lot of ads, but I found that they weren't particularly profitable. And I've also discontinued a lot of those. I'd come up with an idea, and then I'd do a book for every profession you could think of. So you kind of get 20 for the price of one, as it were, in terms of how many books you can publish. But there was a back then no limit on the numbers, and now the daily limit for publishing is set to 3 books. So that slowed me down a bit, but also moving towards a medium content where there's a bit more money to be made has meant that my numbers aren't going up quite as quickly. And over time, low content has largely become unprofitable. So I've generally stopped doing that. But let's dive into the profitability of my business a little bit. So whilst my royalties payments are pretty high, the margin for KDP isn't that great. I make about a 40% margin, so something like that. And that's lower than many of the other YouTubers that I watch who are doing their income reports. And I spend a lot on Amazon ads. Yeah, I spend about $3,000, £2,200 a month on that, and I think I'm pretty poor at optimizing them. So part of this channel's journey is definitely going to be looking at ads and trying to make each one of them more profitable. And I mainly do lottery ads with really quite a low bid. And a lottery ad is where you put a whole load of books, hopefully similar books, into an advert, make a relatively low bid price for each advert placement, or click rather. And then by doing that, you end up, in theory, with a relatively low cost of sale for those adverts. My books are also low and medium content books, and the prices you can charge rather, and the royalties you can get from that are relatively low. So again, that makes being profitable quite challenging, and makes achieving a decent advertising cost of sale, which is the measure of your sort of profitability or ads, quite difficult as well. But if you kind of zoom out and think, if somebody gave me an opportunity every month to spend $3,000 and get $5,000 back, I'd be taking that. So I am fine with that kind of spend. And at my age, I'm 55 now, nearing retirement. $2,000 of profit a month, or £1,500 a month, that's the equivalent of having saved an additional £400,000 or £300,000 into investments. So in terms of if I can keep this revenue stream going through my retirement, that it'd be very nice to have. So overall, I'm delighted with the profitability, but I would like to improve it over time, of course, but it doesn't worry me greatly at the moment. So the thing with KDP is, though, the income's not guaranteed. There are many reasons for that. A pretty brutal one for me was I got my account terminated in July 2023, so just after I'd started and just after things were starting to pick up, and I was getting excited about the potential. I ended up making a mistake with a book that actually was written a really niche name, but it turns out it was trademarked, and that my account was temporarily, well, actually, in theory, permanently terminated. But I managed through emails back and forwards to get the account reinstated. The book, of course, was blocked, but I've moved on from there. I have been safer since then and thorough in what I'm checking, but you never really know that the income stream could dry up at any time. So I don't take it for granted. And that's part of why I want to actually broaden the number of side hustles I've got on the go. There's also been a number of other challenges. Print costs for KDP went up quite substantially in June 2023, which affected my profits. Further to that, medium content books in the UK and low content books and Europe were deemed as stationary, which meant the 20% additional tax in the UK and various different tax values across Europe were applied to those books, and that impacted sales and profits. It's very difficult to charge 20% extra for a book and to maintain the same number of sales. And most recently, in June 2025, KDP royalty rates were altered. And effectively, it means that now, unless you're charging $9.99 for a book in the American market and $7.99 in the UK market, you're not really going to turn a particularly decent royalty rate from each book. So in many ways, the minimum price now has moved up to that level. That's had a surprisingly positive effect, as you saw from the numbers before. They've actually gone up over the last 2 months for me. So from what I thought was probably a kind of an existential threat to the business, it's actually increased my profits. So I'm actually, on reflection, quite pleased with that change. So if you do get into this, or if you're into it already, expect some regular changes that you need to adapt to. This is not a chuck your bucks out there and the revenue will keep coming in consistently for years. You have to keep an eye on things and tweak as it go, and certainly respond to any challenges that Amazon throw at you. So let's talk about some of the September goals I've got then. One of the main ones is getting this YouTube channel off the ground. I've taken a long time to get to the point where I'm actually recording this. Let's see how it goes. I'm hoping to do a video about once a week, once every 2 weeks, depending on how much time I've got, and see if that builds any traction. I'm not expecting necessarily to ever earn any money from this, but it'll be an interesting exercise for me anyway. I'm going to focus mainly on long form videos, but also put some short forms out there as well, just to try and build subscriber numbers a bit more quickly. And on that note, please, if you're enjoying this, do subscribe and like. It'd be great to have you on board for the rest of the journey. In terms of orders, I want to hit 2,000. As you can see, it was tantalizingly close in August. So September, I'd like to cross over that barrier. But we've got one less day. It's 30 days instead of 31. So that's obviously means I have to get slightly more per day to average out at 2,000. And I'd like to replicate the profit of about $2,000, £1,500. That would be, again, a really good bit of revenue coming in. And I've got a bit of a backlog of books, so I'd like to actually get 10 new books published at least this month. And I'm hoping to explore one completely new niche. And I'm going to use that as a transparent case study for this channel. So just to go from the very start to getting the book published, to doing the adverts, and to see how it goes, and track that over the next several months. So I won't be sharing the pen names and the books from my main account, but for this one, well, it's actually on the same account, but it'll be a different pen name. I'll go through that whole process, and we can go through the actual numbers together there. So that should be, again, very interesting. And it'd be great to see some ideas for what that niche might be in the comments. So that's the KDP side of the business, and a bit of YouTube as well. The overall goals I'm trying to do in salary to side hustle, the channel name, is to build my side hustle income so that it matches initially the UK's living wage. So that's £24,570 per year. I'm about 70% towards that at the moment in terms of KDP, as long as the numbers stay about the same. But we'll track this month by month, and then that'll be the initial target. And then if we hit that and maintain it, then we can come up with another target to aim at. But it gives me something to share with you to track. The KDP business will be the core of that revenue still, so that'll be the large focus for me. But I do want to test other side hustles as well. For example, print on demand, Etsy, digital downloads, Amazon Marketplace, and any other suggestions you've got below. I'm very open-minded to try pretty much anything that doesn't involve having a big inventory and preferably not lots of customer work. And I don't think I'm that interested in doing customization and posting stuff out. I think I want to keep it as low touch as I can. And then there's this YouTube channel, which hopefully over time we'll build. And that's the sort of the overall goal of this channel. So over the next several months, you can follow me on that journey. But that's it for this August income report. This is Simon from Salary to Side Hustle. Speak to you soon.